Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Tesoros, the Aperitif concerts. We do this about once or twice a month. For those of you who are just clicking in, have never heard of us before, although I'm not willing to admit there's any such person. Tesoro is an international women's poetry network. We have members internationally, um, and they are, without question, some of the hottest voices on the planet. I say this to introduce every single show. There is no reason for me to change it now. We are beyond blessed to have actually one of our newest Tesoro sisters on with us today. I'm not going to give you her bio. She is. So, Beth, Brooke, tell us about yourself.
Okay, so I am a retired teacher. I live in Dorset, which is, for those of you who don't know Britain, it's on the south edge of the southwest. I live about 7 miles from the sea, and I've lived here since 1980. I have two sons who are, of course, very grown up now, and a grandson. Um, uh, as I say, I was a teacher. I've been retired for 6 years. Um, and just before I entered retirement, I went part-time, and that allowed me to go back to the writing that I used to do when I was a student.
Okay. So, I ask everybody this question, and you can interpret it however it is you want to. Why poetry and why now?
The poetry has always been there. I've always been prone to dashing off a poem, but for most of my working life, that has been for the purposes actually of wanting to teach a particular language point or something to my classes, to my students. Um, why poetry? I think because I think you can say more in fewer words with a poem than you can with a novel or a short story. And, I was a woman with not a lot of time. So to write a poem, there's less to go back and revise, rather than, 30,000 words in a novel. You can say more with less, and I like that.
Yeah. Um,
You asked me about why now.
mhm.
Um, I just feel compelled to do it. I can't not do it. I get quite edgy if a poem isn't sort of turning up in my head reasonably frequently. By which I would mean, one a week is is quite important. But I write what interests me. I write my response to my experiences and to what I see in the world.
A lot of the, excuse me, a lot of the poets that I've spoken to are triggered by things. Sight, sound, smells,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, Past memories, past experiences. Do you have a trigger, or does it just depend on where you are and when the inspiration hits?
I think it just depends on where I am when the inspiration hits. So when I first started writing at a serious, in a serious way, and by that I mean where the poems weren't just sweet things that I would then maybe discard, where I would want to go back and redraft and hone. Um, a lot of my poetry was very much grounded in nature and in the landscape. Dorset, where I live, is particularly beautiful, and it's a very historic landscape. So there are a lot of features from the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age that are still visible in our landscape, and that was quite inspiring. I'd see something and there'd be a slant of light, on the Celtic fields or whatever, and that would sort of start me off. Or the birds. My very first volume of poetry actually is called A Landscape with Birds, and that's because yeah, there are a lot of birds, and the birds to me are a bit like a kind of Greek chorus. They kind of comment on the lives of human beings. So that was how I began. And then uh, I volunteer at the county museum, and they have a very large collection of work by an artist, Dame Elizabeth Frink. She's principally known as a sculptor, but she also has done other things. And we're lucky because she was local. We've got the largest collection of her stuff in the country. And I found her work really compelling. The things that interested her, the themes that she was exploring in that work just absolutely drew me in. And I found myself getting out my phone and starting to write one day when I was gallery stewarding up with the Frink collection. So sometimes it's other people's art that will inspire me. Sometimes it's the landscape. Sometimes it's nature. Increasingly, I would say over the last several years, it's also, I'm writing in response to what's happening in the world. So some of the poems that I'm going to read to you tonight are the most recent 5 poems that I've written, and they are very much about what's happening in Iran at the moment. Because Iran is a country I know, I've been there.
Um, excuse me. I've worked with a couple of different style of writers. There are folks like me who only write when lightning strikes, when there's an inspiration. And then there are those folks who sit down, like in between 12 and 5. That's what they're doing, and that's
Ah,
it
right, yeah.
every single day. And which one are you?
No, I'm not a between 12 and 5 person. I will sit when the mood takes me. Um, and and that's because I can, because I'm retired now. I can do it, when I want. But I will sometimes sit down and I will write things. So I will, for example, I'll make quite a lot of use of imagist poems where you just write something in it's very short little fragments, but that really focus on the kind of imagist aspect of a poem, and that's quite a good exercise for me.
What's the big picture on this? Is this, do you want to end up doing this on stages all around the world? Do you just want to retire somewhere and, write
I
and do, the occasional village pub sort of a thing? Or
I think I would love to do it all over the world, but it's very difficult to find places that I'm not very pushy, let's say that. I'm not very good at putting myself forward to say I've had a couple of gigs, in real life, in the last 18 months, and that's been absolutely great. But on the whole, I haven't found places to kind of be pushy to try and get in there. All I want is to be able to write something that will make a connection with whoever reads it.
I love that.
That's all I'm after. So that means I need to get the work out there somehow, and sometimes that's through me, sometimes it's through having something that gets published in a journal or an anthology, or my own work in a collection, or it's just people that will turn up and read my stuff on Substack. I don't really care. I just want to be able to make that connection with people. so that I see something and I say what I'm feeling and thinking about it, and they might respond to that. And it will either make them think the same thing or it will make them think something else. And either thing is good.
I love that. I absolutely love that answer. Um, so you've got folks who are, for lack of a better phrase, perish or, publish or perish. They
Yeah.
submit every 5 and 1/2 seconds. And then you've got folks who have spent their poetic life pretty much on stage or since the pandemic on screen. Which way do you have a preference?
I like to be, I like, I like the personal connection of performing. And I guess that's the teacher in me. Um, because teaching to some extent is a bit like acting. It is you have this persona and you use it, and I'm very conscious of that to the extent that, so I will share this with you. So on Tuesday it was the memorial service of my oldest sister because she died in January, and the memorial wasn't until Tuesday. And somebody who was at the service who knows me from my professional life, she said, "Oh, when I realized that you were going to be doing, a part of the eulogy, I thought, oh, that's fine. She knows how to do it." And I do, because of, my experience as a teacher. So I like doing that. I like to make that immediate connection and get the feedback. There's nothing really quite like that moment if you've read something and there's that really still moment before people react, and that's fabulous because you know that you've got inside them somehow, and I love that. But obviously if I didn't have stuff in books, then how can people that don't know me or who aren't that local to me, how can they read my work?
There is that. So we've got a minute left. And I always like to ask, completely pointless, trifling questions when we have about a minute left. So, cats or dogs?
Oh, cats every time. It's
I may have to reconsider our relationship, Beth. Uh,
I love dogs. Don't get me wrong. I love dogs, and we always had dogs when I was a child because my father was definitely a dog man. Um, but we've always had cats since I've been a grown up. I have a cat. She is the goddess of the house, and I love her.
okay. Peanut butter or jelly?
Oh, peanut butter.
Okay. You're making a few points here. Okay. It's Coke or Pepsi?
Oh, neither.
I'm definitely gonna have to reconsider this French.
I'm sorry.
No. Um, colors or bright colors or pastels?
Oh, I think I like bright colors. Um, I like red. I like yellow.
Okay. That'll work. Red is my, as it happens, is my favorite color. Um, so we're gonna go ahead and turn the mic and the stage completely over to you, and you are gonna do your thing for the next 30 minutes. So let's go.
Thank you very much, Stacey. So I'm going to read a selection of my poems. So starting with some of my earliest work, earliest published work, and then going up to what I'm working on right now. So my first published collection is this one, which was called The Landscape with Birds, which was published by Hedgehog. And I'm going to read you the very first poem that I ever had published. It was published in an American journal. It was an online journal in those days called Barron Magazine. And the poem is called Geese Fly Over the Portland Road, but that would be Portland in Dorset, not Portland in the States. So, the geese flew today, a vanguard of winter. Like a plough turning the soil, their skein furrowed the sky, wings plunging through the air, pulled up and away from me. Although the sky was still blue and still streaked with the soft orange of an early morning sun, the sight reminded me that the season of our growing together is over and the harvest done. Then I'm going to read you this one. So you will probably remember that Notre Dame burnt down. I was really lucky enough to be able to go and visit not long after it reopened. We went in the new year of 2025. What you may not know is that there were beehives on the roof of Notre Dame Cathedral, and they were on a part of the roof that didn't collapse, and actually the bees survived. And this poem is my response to that. So, The Bees of Notre Dame. On the roof of the cathedral, the bees sleep, soothed by warmth, by smoke as rich as frankincense. Their dreams hum with the sweetness of nectar gathered on the rive gauche. The wax cells soften in the hives. Honey seeps, drips down, unseen, unnoticed. But the bees sleep. The crackling far below drifts into their dreaming as the rustle of paper wings. On the pavement, people swarm, drawn by a memory of faith and grief. They gaze up, incredulous. And this poem is about resilience, really, and it's called They Just Sing Anyway, and it contains the first appearance of the goddess of my house, my black cat. It's called They Just Sing Anyway. Sparrows cluster in the unruly mass of clematis and honeysuckle bordering the garden. They sing ebullient songs, much bigger than themselves, flit about in the ramshackle canopy, choose not to see the cat that sits close and is dangerous, too sleek, too grounded in its own nature not to be a threat. Maybe they think the nondescript feathers hide them. Maybe they cannot hear the beauty of their own voices, how life longs to take possession of it. Maybe they see the cat and just sing anyway. Now I'm going to read you some from this. It's called Transformations, and all of the poems in it are responses to artwork by the fantastic Elizabeth Frink. If you don't know her work, I really recommend Googling her later. Fantastic. So I'm just going to read you two poems from this set. This one's called Baboon, and it's a little bronze sculpture, which is in my museum. It was made in 1989. This Frink had views about the relationship between human beings and animals, and you can probably pick that up in this poem. Baboon. Aren't we brothers under the skin? My thumbs as able to oppose as yours, as likely to rip the tenderness from fear, explore its raw edges. Don't we both make fists of ourselves? And after, when we wrap our arms around one another to comfort our regret, do we not watch the same sun bleach the morning yellow? And this poem was nominated for a Pushcart Prize just as this volume came out, because it had been published in a journal. It's called Horses at the Battle of Philippi, and it's an illustration from an edition of Odes by Horace that she was asked to do the illustration for. The steam and stink of fear is all-encompassing. Riderless horses, flanks slippery with sweat, plunge through the chaos, their eyes made wild, made mad by the thrust and noise of war. They run, slip on earth made wet by the blood and piss and excrement of man and animal. One horse stumbles, hooves flail against air. The crash of its landing splinters the thigh of the man on its back, who had thought himself warrior, strong, redoubtable. And the screams of both are high-pitched, terrible. Just a couple from here. This is Chalk Stories. All the poems in this are poems that are about Dorset, my life in Dorset, the history and the landscape of Dorset. So I'm just going to read you two. This one is called The Birch Trees Sing in Puddletown Woods. Puddletown is a little, well, it's an area of woodland about 2 miles away from where I live. Beech trees sing in Puddletown Woods. We are the first, the new beginning, 10,000 green hearts raised towards the sky. We are wind-born, seed small whispers laid upon the earth to root in heath and heather, soften the hard edges. Our grace is upright, white, dressed in the transparency of moonlight, a beacon to bring you from the frontier of night, the long darkness of death. The male and the female of us bloom on the same bough. We are the new beginnings, green hearts raised up to the sky. Look for us in the edge places, in the damask rose of sunset and the morning's bright. And this one, the other thing I should say is I live quite close to, well, about 10 miles away to an army base. So you can often hear the sounds of artillery fire when they're practicing out on Bovington Heath. And this poem, in a way, makes reference to that amongst other things. And it's called Today There Is a Ceasefire. The day offers itself, a gift wrapped in translucent silk, paler than a blackbird's egg, mine to open. Inside is the first hour of all the mornings there have ever been. Sunrise that tingles with lemon sharpness, paper silhouettes of trees against the apricot wash of a dawn horizon. There is the cry of jackdaws, the growl of pebbles on the shoreline. There is the silence that comes after the guns stop firing. And having ended on a poem with guns, I'm going to read a couple of poems from my current collection, which is called A Long Way Down. It was joint winner of the Brian Dempsey Memorial Prize in 2025. And all of the poems in this are about my father, who was a career soldier. He joined up in 1938 and stayed on after the war until he retired in 1974. It's a given that he had PTSD and all those things, but also he went to a lot of places that he loved. And one of those happened to be Palestine, but we'll come to that later. So this poem is called Afterlife. The souls of the ancestors settle themselves on the tongues of goldfinches, relish their reacquaintance with taste. It has been so long. There is novelty in the consumption of Niger seed, thistledown. Later, The souls embed themselves in the throats of blackbirds, revel in their new ability to imitate sounds remembered from life. Emboldened, they lodge themselves in the minds of magpies, prophesy with exquisite brutality the numbers of our joys and sorrows, hint at secrets they know we carry but dare not tell. This poem is called Nakba, and if you know the Arabic for that, you know that that means catastrophe. My father spent some of his service after the war in Palestine. Palestine was one of only two places that he ever expressed a real longing to return to before he died. Sadly, that wasn't possible, but he loved Palestine. He loved the people. So, Nakba. We are already deep into that night where the unspeakable creeps out. We sense the tapping of its spindle fingers as it feels its way along the walls, crawls to meet the rhythm of our hurrying feet. We are anxious to reach the safety of home, where the lamps are lit, and there are, we think, no shadows to disquiet us. We walk, try to keep ourselves from running, but the monsters of our unfinished business wait just ahead. Wraith-like, they slip in behind us as we open the front door, sit in our favourite chairs. Their rictus smiles greet us when we enter the sanctuary of our living room and turn on the light. The last poem I'll read from this section is called The Prophet Ezekiel Comes to Gaza. This was nominated for Forward Prize last year. Ezekiel walks the wreckage of the road south. The buildings all around are shattered, splintered, a valley of dry bones that used to be a city. Death is everywhere. Ezekiel stands among the ruins in a pale blue helmet, high-vis jacket, with empty hands. Stands until the rust-coloured sunset turns to cold night. He finds it hard to bear the indifference of the stars, and despite the urging of the Lord, he has no appetite for prophecy, knows whatever he says, these bones will not live. Nothing he can conjure will make the dead along the Gaza Strip rise up again. He cannot ask the wind to enter these lungs and make them breathe. His hands are empty. His mouth, the mouths of his brothers, the mouths of his children, stopped up with ash. And the cold night fades with the morning star. Ezekiel stands waiting for the Lord, and dew falls upon the bones of the innocent dead. Now I'm going to read you some of my most recent poems now. So these haven't been published in the collection yet, although some of them I hope will be, because I'm working on a collection which the working title for which is Human Geography. Anyway, this is one where my cat makes another appearance. It's called A Ritual to Ensure My Safe Return Home. In the days before I leave, I speak to the cat, explain that I must go away, specifying the number of days that she is to be left in charge. I tell her that she is being given a great responsibility to maintain the equilibrium of the place. This means that she mustn't kill anything, especially not the robins, who are certainly the spirits of ancestors and must be allowed access to the garden at all times. It's possible that jackdaws are also ancestors, and I praise her for never having tried to kill one. I also mention that I love her and will soon be back from this other place that I know she wouldn't like, because the smells there are strange, the hunting grounds too unfamiliar to be fruitful. Anyway, I say. I am expecting her to be sitting on the bookcase by the window, looking out for me at the precise time I expect to arrive home, providing the robins have willed it and the trains are punctual. Um, my eldest son, our eldest son, lives in Alberta now in Canada. He is definitely a Canadian. And this is a poem about a visit that we made. It's called Peter Takes Us to See the Dinosaurs. Our son, a grown-up now, beard flecked with grey, drives us to Drumheller in the Badlands to see the dinosaurs. We sit in the back of the car, one of those role reversals time brings us to. Me longing to kick the back of his seat, bang his shoulders with my hands, demand over and over and over again, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there? This one's for Stacey, whose favourite colour is red. It's called The Drape and Sway of Linen. A woman walks to the market. She wears a red linen dress, the sort her mother might have worn when she was young, before the war. If you ask which war, I will tell you there have always been wars somewhere. The name of the one we die in hardly matters. What matters is the woman walking to market in that red linen dress, and how the shadow of her moves with the drape and sway of the linen, a poppy in a field of corn. And here's another poem. This is from my most recent visit. Well, not quite. This was just before we went to Canada. It's called Northern Lights over Alberta. The aurora borealis is having a moment. Media feeds of excited posts from people proclaiming they have been blessed to observe those luminous transparencies of green and purple silk rippling across the night sky. I send you a text asking if you have seen this spectacle. Not yet, you say, and hope they will be there again at bedtime. And I think how the night for which you wait is already here for me. I wake next day to an inbox full of your photographs, the northern lights shot from the decking in your garden, beauty illuminating a moment which for you is now, but already yesterday for me. Beauty hanging in your sky, 4,000 miles away. And this is a poem. I said I have a grandson, and so Robin's 2 1/4 now, but periodically when I visit, a poem will arise out of that visit. This one is called Second Spring. He's a January birthday. So the first spring is a gradual uncurling, a coming to terms with life outside the womb. He knows the comfort of his mother's milk, the softness of her voice as she gathers him to her. He does not know how the world turns or what snowdrops are, how they thrust through winter, promise spring. But he knows the beat of his father's heart, the voice that soothes him into sleep. These things are enough. He grows into his second spring, stands, small, curious. He knows there is an outside and inside, things familiar, things strange. He reaches up to curl his arms around his father's legs, makes them his vantage, knows they will keep him balanced, steady. Right, almost there at the end. I'm going to read you the 5 poems that I think will form the heart of this new collection that I'm writing. So they're a sequence of 5, and I will just read them like that. It's called Human Geography. 1. The rooks know. 5 days without rain, and my garden is dry enough to walk on. In places, celandine, the lesser sort, has taken over, a straggling mess of almost buttercups. I think about weeding, lack enthusiasm. On the way into town, rooks have started building nests. They offer me a running commentary on their progress. Meanwhile, the gulls, who have been away, are back, patrolling the rooftops and shouting, always shouting. The rooks shout back, "Fuck off!" I take the long route through the cemetery, away from the avian back and forth. Plastic flowers on some of the graves affront me, but there are yellow primroses between the headstones. They call to me, "Look, look," animated by the breeze. I think of Nowruz in Shiraz when the Eram garden was full of pansies and orange calendula. I stood in line with all the other pilgrims, waited to lay my hand upon Hafez the poet's tomb. Today, instead, I shout like a rook at the muse. 2. Requiem. In the evening, Mozart's Requiem in a local church. The night is cold. Orion's belt visible. Betelgeuse glows, a beacon in those dark times when the moon is prone to alteration. Tonight, the moon is a golden lunula. I breathe in the music, let it speak to me of judgment, redemption, grief. Beyond the choir is darkness. The small red light of the sanctuary lamp proclaims the invisible presence of God. The choir sings, Dies Irae, Day of Wrath, no Sanctus yet, the hymn of victory, that triumph over death. In the Strait of Hormuz, light bursts over the water. 3. Cake in Isfahan. The first warm day of spring, warm enough to sit outside. We order coffee. There is the question of cake. So much choice on display. French breakfast pastries, tiffins, flapjacks, cinnamon buns. So much choice for those who have time and freedom to choose. In Esfahan, we had baklava and some sort of carrot cake. There was cardamom coffee. I think about the people around Naqsh Jahan Square. Do they sit in the sun, drink coffee while the drones fly? Is there any kind of cake? 4. The tolling bell. In the morning, the church bells are ringing, and I do not know why. Google tells me it's the saint day of Oscar Romero, a good man murdered as he celebrated Mass. I do not think the church bells toll for him. The warmth of yesterday is gone. A cold wind strafes the grass, disturbs the branches of the yew tree. The sky is the colour of dirty snow. I see a small girl crying as she trails behind her mother. I watch them pass on this day that asks me to remember a good man murdered, this day where a child is crying and her mother keeps walking, this day where children have been turned into collateral damage. Where? It hardly seems to matter. 5. Baba Ganoush. Today, a madman said that probably he will annihilate a civilization. Says, probably it will not rise again. I go into the kitchen, cook, my act of defiance. I cook Iran, char grill aubergines, peel the skins, mash the flesh. I add tahini, garlic, baba ganoush as a salve for heartache and rage. I roast red peppers for the muhammara. There will be falafels, deep fried and crisp. I make herb frittata, soul food. The chopping of dill and coriander turns my fingers green as I anticipate the sour burst of barberries on my tongue. Think about the last time I ate them. Think about a civilization a madman has promised to annihilate. I scatter jewels of pomegranate onto the salad, invite the neighbors in. Inside my head, the rooks shout. Thank you very much for letting me do this.
That was absolutely lovely. It hit me on so many levels, I can't even tell you. Y'all open up your mics and throw this lady some roses. That was absolutely fantastic.
All right, that was dope. I really enjoyed it. I really did. And you did pieces that I just was totally, it was totally unexpected. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Beth.
Thank you, Jay.
So, for those of us who are going to see this later on, Tesoro is forever doing things online and on the ground. Our next online show will be May the 9th. We have a show called Nuance, and I'm featuring. So keep an eye at www.firesingers.com for more information on that and all the other Tesoro programming. I want again to thank Beth Brooke so much. This was a lovely, lovely intro, Beth, and I appreciate your time.
Oh, I feel really honored to be asked to do it. So thank you so much. And I have to say in advance, I am going to Ireland on the day that you're doing your thing. So I'm really sorry I'm not going to be able to be there, but
It
we
it
are
will
taking,
be as this will be on
so
our
I
YouTube
can find
channel.
it on YouTube.
Yes,
That's
you'll
great.
find it
No,
on the Tesoro Poets Network YouTube channel. So
it's right.
we immortalize everything.
Fantastic. No,
So
we're taking our grandson and his mum and dad. We're going to Ireland. My husband is Irish, and so we're taking Robin to the land of his ancestors.
oh, cool. There should be more of that going on. Um, for those of you who are here, for those of you who will see this later on, y'all take it as light as you can. Hold on to each other because we need each other right now. And we will see you somewhere around the way. Bye bye.
Oh, thank you. Bye.